My name's Tora, and I'll be taking you through the presentation tonight. So I really appreciate you guys making time as we wind down the semester and get ready for the holidays. So I appreciate you guys all being here. So we're gonna get started off quite quickly. Just so you know, this is a bit of a rapid fire kind of presentation where we put a lot of information out there. Okay, you will not necessarily grasp all that information right now, nor need it right now. So one of the things that we do is we've taken these slides and we've put them all on Facebook. Okay, so to get these slides, what you can do is you can go into Facebook, Prep 101, like Prep 101 MCAT. Okay, it's quite a well curated feed, I might point out, but like Prep 101 MCAT, and then on the bottom left, as you can see on these slides, there are, you can download these slides or you can gain access to them. And the reason why you want to continually kind of gain access to them is because a lot of the information that we're presenting tonight isn't necessarily something that you're going to need right now, but you will need in April. Okay, you might need in February, or you might need next September. Okay, so these are kinds of lots and lots of information. This is really the only place like in Canada you can get all this information that's all accurate and curated and up to date and all that kind of stuff. So this is a really good resource as your journey into medical school has begun. So like Prep 101 MCAT on Facebook, and then you can get the slides and we don't, bombard you with spam or anything like that. So who are we, the lovely ladies that you're looking at right now? My name's Tora, and I am an instructor with Prep 101. I teach biology and cars because that's where my passion lies. I have a PhD in worm gonads. It's pretty amazing. Yes, you heard that right. It's worm gonads. I did a genetics and cell biology degree at the U of A, where I still teach. And so my whole job, my whole life revolves around teaching biology, and I love it. And I'm not a medical student, nor a medical doctor. So I have a professorship at the University of Alberta. So for any of you guys out there tonight, any of my students who might be there, hi, grades are posted. And I teach intro cell biology and a variety of other courses with the University of Alberta. But I've also been teaching with Prep 101 for a long time, since I was in grad school and beginning in grad school. And I've been teaching the MCAT for similarly a very long time. So I've seen a lot of you guys in your position, and I've seen a lot of very successful doctors from that. I have been treated by some of my former students. So I'm really kind of invested in your career and your future because you might treat me one day. So I get to kind of see that side. The other person joining us tonight is Kat, and she can tell you a little bit about herself.
Hi guys, my name's Kat. I'm a current first year medical student at UBC. In my previous experience, I did my Master of Science in Chemistry. I graduated this year. And I did my Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and Chemistry, all at UBC. I don't have experience as as a prof, but I've been an MCAT prep instructor for the past 3 summers in Vancouver. And I've also TA'd organic chemistry for about 3 or 4 years. And I was a biochemistry prep instructor at UBC for several years as well.
All right, so really, I'm going to be doing a lot of the talking, and Kat's going to be giving some color and giving a lot of her advice from someone on the inside. But there's also the question forum, and you'll see Kat busily typing away. So you're more than welcome to post questions there. A lot of the questions that we get to early on are things that we will get to. Are you going to talk about interviews? Yes. So we'll hold on for that. But one of the things to recognize about your journey into medicine is it is just getting started. It is something that, you have this really long-term goal, and it takes some perseverance and some dedication. And I really appreciate all of you who have chosen this career path, because you're going to take care of me and my family as you get older. And we're going to be focusing on Canadian medical schools tonight. We're not going to talk at all about American or international schools. Those are a totally different ballgame. But we are going to be focusing on the 14 different English-speaking medical schools. For those of you who are bilingual, then there are a couple of more doors open to you if you're Francophone. But what we're going to be doing tonight is really start talking about the big picture. Why do you want to go into medicine? Really start doing a little bit of soul searching. We're getting some heavy stuff right now. Do some soul searching And how do you prepare? How do you get ready to get into medicine? What does your application look like? What is the interview process like? How do you cope with your decision, and the decision that the medical schools make about your application? So lots and lots and lots to cover. And really, we're taking you tonight from right now, wherever you sit, whatever, if you're like me sitting in your basement teaching to the wall, and then moving you into actually getting accepted. So the biggest moment where you've got to, got to really sit back and think about what this all means is medicine right for you? And I'll tell this maybe from personal experience that I did really well in high school biology. It was very biology minded and science minded from a very young age. And I just felt like I was getting railroaded into medicine. Like everyone's like, oh, you got 90, whatever I got in bio, higher level bio. I'm not going to tell you my grades. Um, and, uh, and they're like, you must want to be a doctor. I was like, no, actually, like I faint at the thought of a needle, let alone the actual process. And the idea of cutting, heebie-jeebies everywhere, like everywhere. I didn't want to do that. And I wasn't really given a lot of options. Medicine was never right for me, but it was sort of, I don't know, I'm not forced on me, but like assumed that if you're good at science, then you want to be a doctor. So why medicine? Well, I'll leave that to Kat because she's actually pursuing it.
Yeah, so why medicine's really tough, but there's a lot of different things that words that spring to mind when you think about medicine. People think about things like altruism and compassion. And a lot of my classmates, you wouldn't necessarily think of them as like the most brilliant person in the class, but they have such amazing compassionate skills and they've got such great people skills that it's a great fit for them. So you don't have to necessarily be the smartest. Sometimes you're just a very compassionate person. You do have to get a certain GPA, but it's not prohibitive. A lot of people are really interested in science and they really like applying their knowledge because medicine, you have this very unique opportunity to do research which is immediately applicable to the human body. And that's available other places, but it's kind of rarer. A lot of my classmates have amazing teamwork skills, and it's a great career if you really enjoy teamwork. And as someone who's been stuck in school for a very long time, there's a lot of lifelong learning that you'll do. You'll always have a day where you're going to have to learn something new. So speaking of the lifelong learning, I think for me, by the time I get out of residency, which is a paid position, but it's still school, it'll be about 20 years of schoolwork. You start out with your undergraduate studies, which take 3 to 4 years. You take some prerequisite science courses and your MCAT, which we'll get into a little bit later. And if you were like me, a lot of people will also take graduate studies, be it a master's or a PhD, and that'll take somewhere between 1 to 6 years, but usually 2 or 4 years. After you've done that first decade, you get to go to medical school. The first 1.5 to 2 years is about pre-clerkship. It's more studying, more classes. There's minimal clinical experience there. And then in your last 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years, you do clerkship. And that's when you start doing practical rotations in the hospital and you get to finally do more direct experience and figure out what exactly you like in medicine. After that, you do residency, which is basically like you basically work as a doctor, but you get paid slightly less and you get a little bit more education at the time. So you'll do that from between 2 to 6 years. And after that, if you really have decided you haven't had enough of school, you will do a fellowship, and that's another 1 to 2 years of research experience. So as I've laid it out, it's a lot of time invested. So some bad reasons to spend 2 decades of your life in training are that, my parents did it or my uncle did it. Family tradition is great, but with that amount of time invested, you need to have something a little bit deeper as a reason. The same sort of thing for getting rich. When you get out after the 20 years, you'll have a high-paying job, probably. But during the time you're in school, you're going to have a lot of debt. There's a lot of easier ways to get rich if that's your only goal in life. In addition, the adrenaline rush of saving lives and the sheer challenge, there are some elements of that in medicine. But even if you become someone like a surgeon, that's going to be what you do every single day. So it won't necessarily be the same adrenaline rush. And having a deeper reason or feeling like it's your calling will make it a lot easier rather than just thinking that it will be new every day. Um, so to transition, some better reasons to keep going with such a career is that you really want to help, and you want to help in a way um, that you work as a member of a team, or that you get to do research with the human body. And these are unique things that medicine allows you to, they're unique things that a medicine allow you to do that you can't do with other sciences. And so if you feel that you're interested in the human body, or if you're interested in solving problems with people's health, then this is a great reason to consider medicine. I think the greatest thing to consider is your interactions with other people. So if you have experience dealing with patients, and for me, I found that I really enjoyed talking to people and sussing out what exactly was the root of their problems. If this is the kind of problem solving you like, this is something that medicine will poise you to do. Um, so after you ask yourself, am I ready for medical school, which is a tough enough question by itself, you have to think about, am I ready for medical school? Because the competition is, not to sugarcoat it, it's quite tough. You're constantly asking yourself, am I smart enough? Because a lot of people have really great GPAs. A lot of people also have really great interests in medicine. They have great reasons. And so you're constantly questioning, are my reasons good enough? Another thing is, do you have a genuine desire to serve? Because it's not an easy path. And so thinking about, do I really want to do this is a good question to ask. In addition, and I think about this when I wake up late every day, is do I have the self-discipline to get up early? Because a lot of the time shifts start really early. Do I have the perseverance? It's going to be a long amount of school. Will you be able to go through it? Am I too old? Spoiler for the am I too old is that some of my classmates are in their 30s or 40s. So unless you're maybe 65, you may not want to consider that. But if you're younger than 50, you're probably doing pretty well. And can my personal relationships stand it? I don't get to see my friends every week. No, I don't get to see them at all because it's COVID, but before that, I would see them about every 2 months. So having friends that are understanding and having family members that are understanding is something you need to think about. And if you can personally take not talking to people for long periods of time.
Although, Kat, I might point out that if your personal relationships can't stand you pursuing a career in medicine, you might want to rethink personal relationships, which ones you've chosen, especially if it's a non-spouse, that you already have kids with. That's something to prioritize. But yeah, I mean, let's face it, right? If someone's not going to support your journey into medicine, then maybe you want to cut them out. But I digress. So the other thing is, can you afford it? Oh, it's a big price tag. It's a big price tag. 4 years of medical school. Now, Kat, I'm not going to ask you about your finances because that would be unfair. But it's certainly expensive. I know from my friends that have gone through medicine. I didn't talk to them for a few years, but they're my friends again. Is that they never worried. They never worried about money. Like it wasn't that they were, eh, going to Paris for the weekend, but they just sort of hunker down. It's hard to spend money when you're in medical school because you're so busy. And there's also tons of access to funds. You have lines of credit, you have really good interest rates, in some cases none, depending on the bank. And I've had a lot of friends do say this, that like literally one friend in particular, he's like, I got my acceptance into medical school. And I walked into the bank and I showed them almost without saying anything at a meeting. They're like, "Yeah, and bam, here's like $100,000 line of credit." It was just like, oh, they just toss money at you. But as Kat was saying, you do have a future where you're not going to get rich, but you're going to be comfortable, and paying those debts off and investing in yourself is not necessarily something that's going to be an overburden. So let's get to the admissions process. Okay, so let's get to what the next couple of years for you guys looks like. So number one, you guys are, I'm going to sort of generally assume that everyone on the other side of the fence tonight, on the other side of the screen, are first, second years, usually just kind of fresh out of high school. Again, there will be a diverse range of people that I'm talking to tonight and a diverse range of applicants, and I'll kind of dance around those. But the traditional applicant, you guys are 19, 20 and thinking about a career in medicine and you're hunkering down with your undergraduate studies. Some of you may have just finished your first semester of first year, which is like impossible. It's so hard. But anyways, you just did the hardest thing in university. If you're in first year, first semester, and you just finished, that's the hardest semester of your life. So then you'll be getting ready for write the MCAT. Then you'll be doing all your volunteers and all those kinds of fantastic things that all you incredible people do. Then you get to your application. Okay. So we'll separate these as well. Your application is quite extensive. It is quite labor intensive to assemble a strong application that will get you in. And then we process those applications. Hopefully it goes to an interview and hopefully you get in. So what does your timeline look like? Okay, so what would, most of you, again, I'm assuming are in your first and second year. Some of you may be in grad school. Some of you may have been finished school 10 years ago and thinking about a career change. All of those are still applicable. So the first year, you're focusing on your GPA. Okay, that's what you're doing in your first year. You're focusing on just figuring out, oh my God, university life. Okay. The second year, ideally, for the traditional applicant, the summer of your second year, you write your MCAT. Now, the reason for that is that if you're planning on going into medicine, a lot of people are in the sciences. You're in your undergraduate organic chemistry and you're doing some cell biology, you're doing some genetics, you're doing some physiology, and a lot of those things are tested on the MCAT. So if you write the MCAT after your second year, you can try it after your first. Definitely not going to stop you from doing that. But if you write it after your second year, a lot of the material that's tested on the MCAT is fresh for your traditional science student. So that's kind of what we generally recommend. And then the summer of after your third year, you spend quite a bit of time personal reflection about what your application wants to look like, how you want to present yourself to the application committee, and getting your reference letters and all those kinds of things. So you're ideally, again, this is the perfect scenario. Obviously, even Kat didn't have the cleanest route as it changed. But the MCAT second year, summer of your second year, summer of your third year, you work on your application because your applications are due the September of your fourth year. Okay, so they're due in September, they're due a year prior to your acceptance and your entry into the minute you walk into medical school is because you applied an entire calendar year prior. And then interviews are hosted sometime in your fourth year. So in terms of looking at what you're doing now, your GPA, okay, your GPA or your undergraduate career. How important is what university you go to? It's really not. I mean, it's really not. Like, not in Canada. All of our universities are wonderful. Yeah, are like the big three, U of T, UBC, and McGill better on the Maclean's rankings? Sure, but a 4.0 really translates to a 4.0 across the board. The reason why we have standardized testing like the MCAT is because if you go to Des Moines University in Iowa, it's maybe not the same as Harvard. Just throwing that out there. So for Canada, it really doesn't matter. Does it matter for your application how hard your major is? Heck no. No, 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 no. Okay. It does not matter that you've chosen to be an immunologist, which I teach immunology and I still find it baffling. It's so complicated. Then it doesn't matter. Do what you love. And that will be kind of a theme of tonight. So it doesn't matter how hard your major is, doesn't matter how hard your courses is. It doesn't matter if you're in physiology or pharmacology or immunology, things that are relevant to your medical career. That may be already what you're interested in, but it doesn't matter on your application. Okay. What matters is your GPA. That's what matters. Okay. What courses are you going to take that you're going to love? Because if you love them and you're good at them, then you will get a high GPA. It just works that way. Don't take something that you're not good at, but looks hard. As soon as I finished my organic chemistry, I was out of there. Like out. I kind of liked it. I was terrible at it. I could not for the life of me get over a B+ in organic chemistry. Like no matter how hard I worked. So it wasn't for me. Genetics came easy. And I loved it. So I stayed in genetics. What medical schools are looking for is not someone who can ace a bunch of physiology exams. They're looking for a holistic approach. They're looking for cognitive skills, critical thinking, a lot of C words, lot of C words. Any C word? Not all of them. All C words, that's what they're looking for. Commitment, compassion, communication, cooperation. Have this slide kind of like screenshotted in your mind because this is what they're looking for. How can you prove to the admissions committee you have these qualities? Is it through, volunteering, your work? If you're a server, then guess what? You're really good at communication and patience. And, all these things become really important. And you probably are very mature in dealing with adversity. So, you recognize that these are things that they're looking for, and you need to establish not that you have them, that you can prove that you have them. And the reason for this is because what makes a good doctor is not just book smarts. As Kat was saying, it takes sort of the EQ, that emotional quotient, high just ability to be a good communicator. You have to be professional. You have to be a scholar. Again, lifelong learning. You have to be an advocate for health. It's kind of your job, right? Is preventing disease in your patients as much as it is treating the disease in your patients. And way more managing, way more paperwork than you probably want to know of, but a lot of teamwork. So that's what the admissions committee are looking for, because that's what makes a good doctor in today's world. So we'll go through the application process. So the first thing is screening. Okay, the first thing is, can you literally just get in the door? Will they even look at your application? And so the first step is, do you even meet? And some schools will go through them all. Okay. Some schools have a minimum criteria that you don't even, your application, they'll take your money. You can apply, but they don't even look at your application because it's like it doesn't meet the minimums for the MCAT scores or the GPAs. So the first step is, for most schools, you need a degree. There's a couple of exceptions. For most schools, there's a minimum GPA and minimum MCAT score to apply. Again, we will be treating each school, and you have all this information on these slides. So we do have all the data for you. We won't list off all the data as we go through, but it's there so that you can slowly select your preferred schools. So then they see whose application to look at. Then if you look at their application, then they'll choose who to interview. And again, they look at your MCAT, they look at your GPA, they look at your personal essays or autobiographical sketch of effectively your resume, your references, those kinds of things. And then after that, they take this whole package and they say, all right, we've talked to this person, we've seen their application, we've read all their essays and reference letters. Who do we want to actually let into medicine? And most schools, when they see and you've had an interview, will go back and say, GPA still matters, MCAT matters. So one of the important things to notice about this slide is that GPA matters at every step of the process, and so does your MCAT score. Your MCAT score is a fundamental screening tool at every stage of the process, which is why you guys are freaking out about the MCAT right now, and that's why we're here. So we'll look at the Canadian medical schools. I will point out that a couple of things here. One is there's a couple of weird ones that have just a little bit of a different philosophy about their undergraduate medical education. Calgary and McMaster tend to be just slightly different. They focus more on much more holistic. Calgary is much more focused on the mature student. The life students had a lot more life experience than your typical medical student. I like to slag on U of T here because I feel like U of T is still looking for robots. Kidding, not really. But so what all this information that we're going to present about each individualized school, you guys have to sit back and say, okay, which schools am I a good candidate at? And in general, most schools have provincial requirements that they will let in more Alberta residents to U of A than they will let in out of province applicants, which includes international students. So if you're an international student, you are considered just simply out of province. So you will generally focus on, for now, your home province school. Okay. And when we start looking at these, all of it's expensive. Okay. Again, notice here Calgary does a 3-year program because they don't take summers. You just go, 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 go for 3 full years. The others ones take summers. And all of them are just jaw-droppingly expensive for their yearly tuition. But again, it's just part of an investment in yourself. And so we see that, oh, look, and look, McGill has, hey, if you're a Quebec resident, you get a tax break. So let's look at what the admission statistics look like. This is the most current data. And on average, there's about a 11% acceptance rate. Okay, so of the people that finally get to compiling this massive application, 11% of you will get in. And I don't know, this stat always kind of, I like it, like it's 11%. That's pretty good odds. Like it's, you have a chance. And so these admission statistics are, I don't know, I think kind of favorable. Like obviously we'd like it to be higher, but it's not bad. Then we get to the Ontario schools. And the Ontario schools always kind of skew this data simply because there's one central application service for all the Ontario schools called OMSAS, the Ontario Medical School Application Service. And so when you go to apply to Ontario schools, you just go, I'm going to apply to Western. I'm going to apply to Toronto. I might as well click the box for Northern Ontario. I might as well click the box for this. And they just take your money for the application fee. But it's way easier to apply to Ontario schools. So they get more applicants. So it's not that they're only accepting 4%, but it's a bit of a skewed stat because there's also just more applicants. And again, you start to see the data across the board. So what we see is that there is also generally geographic preferences. So what we see is there's general favor for provincial applicants, simply because we live in a provincial healthcare system. And if they're investing in you to become a doctor, because our tuitions, despite how high they are still subsidized, they want to make sure that you're going to stay. And so the general it's like 80-20 or higher preference for in-province applicants. So that's why I say tonight, like all this information in all these schools, start by focusing on your provincial school. The Ontario schools, again, kind of broaden a little bit where geographic preferences aren't favored, but Ottawa still has some restrictions and so does Western. So keep those things in mind. Again, focus on your provincial schools and then leave the door open to being the top student who gets into U of T. Fantastic. U of T is the best medical school, the most respected medical school across Canada. All of them are incredible. All of them take incredible students. So, and Maritime schools are a little bit more restrictive. They have a little bit more of a ratio skewing towards in-province applicants. So if we look at it across the board and we subtract all the multiple applicants, right? Because a lot of people will, of course, apply to more than one school. Of the applicants, 19% will find a home somewhere in medical school. And I think that becomes really important, that there is a path to medical school for everyone. If we've heard from Kat, her path was a little windy. And actually, Kat, I want to ask you here, like, why the change of heart to go and switch from science, which is amazing, to medicine?
Yeah, science is amazing, and I really thought I was set down a path and I was going to be a chemist, but I think I was sitting in lab one day looking at my column dripping out, and if you've ever seen one of those columns, sometimes you want to turn the polarity of the solvent up so your compound comes out. And as soon as you do that, everything comes out and you have to do the column over again because you didn't separate what you wanted. And I was looking at the back of my fume hood thinking about my life. As one is wont to do, because you're sitting there for about 8 hours. And I was like, man, I really miss talking to people. And then I sat there and I was like, well, what do I miss about talking to people? And I'm like, well, what I really like is I like talking to someone and figuring out what's going on in their life. And then I like to see them every 3 months. And I feel great when I remember what happened to them and I can piece it together and I can talk to them. And then I kind of sat there and I was looking at my column and I'm like, man, that kind of sounds like what someone in family practice would do. And so I was like, well, guess I should apply to med school because that seems like the kind of thing I want to do for the rest of my life. Um, so I think, I guess the point is that I thought about it for a long time and I was worried that I wasn't the right person for medicine. And so I mostly tried out my master's to make sure that I really loved chemistry. And I think every single day that I was in the lab, I thought about, people too much. And I was like, well, I think that I really want to deal with people. And that's when I decided to switch to medicine.
It's funny because it's kind of like my journey as well. Like I loved grad school. I had a wonderful experience, but I missed people and I chose the teaching route instead. Um, okay, so let's talk about how to prepare. So here we are. You've got you're likely an undergrad. Again, there's lots of people who that are part of our audience tonight that aren't necessarily the traditional applicant. But let's go through and say, okay, well, what are the prerequisites? And again, as a general rule, there are no true prereqs for a lot of the medical schools across Canada. You just need a degree in anything. One of my favorite students who took the MCAT course, who took the Prep 101 course. Oh, he was just so lovely. He's must be in fourth year, like he must be starting his residency. He wants to be an OB, but he's a composer, like music. He is a musician. That was his career prior to deciding to go into medicine, and now he's becoming becoming an OB. So for many schools, the degree that it is does not matter. It's your GPA, and can you prove that you're a real human on the other side of that GPA? And do you have all these wonderful criteria? Again, most schools require a degree as a general rule. Calgary is a bit weird, but if you're the 20-year-old who's just finished your second year of university or halfway through your second year of university, you're like, oh, I'm not going to finish my undergrad. I'm just going to go straight into U of C. That's not who they're looking for. U of C is looking for someone who's already been a paramedic, a firefighter, a lifeguard, a professional server, a mom. And then they go, you know what? I need a reset and maybe a midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. I want to go into medicine. But there's a lot more life experience under their belt. They do take the 22-year-olds, the fresh out of their degree, but their philosophy is generally looking for more mature. I think for most schools, the age of the first year class is 24. For U of C, it's 28. So to give you an idea. So if you're out there and you're finished parenting your 3 kids and you're finally wanting to pursue your career in medicine, Calgary becomes a really good place for you. Definitely, but any school is a good school. So again, for most schools, no prerequisites are required. U of T has very basic prereqs, just 2 full-time courses in the life sciences, which qualifies as all kinds of cell biology, physiology, all those kinds of things, and some humanities. That's pretty much most degrees, right? We'll have some sort of criteria for that. So again, get a degree, follow your passion, and then figure out where you want to be. So, choosing your major is very stressful. I'll tell you a little bit of my story of how I ended up in genetics because it's ridiculous. I was finishing my first year and then I wanted to change my program and declare my major because before I previously had been undeclared. So I go to the admin and I apply and I say, okay, well, I took Bio 107 and which is what I teach now. I took the course and I really like the micro component. So I'm going to put my major as microbiology. I like the genetics too. I like that in high school. And maybe I'll put genetics as my minor. And got my admissions and said, okay, you've been accepted into the program of a major in genetics and a minor in microbiology. I was like, wait, what did I applied for the opposite. So I went to the admin office and I was like, I think I don't remember what I wrote down, but I think they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna pull your file, and turns out it's a bit of an administrative error. Sorry about that. Yeah, we made a mistake. If you want to change your program, that'll be $60 to apply for a change of program. I was like, but you're the ones that screwed up. I don't have $60. Like I'm in first year. What? So I stayed in genetics. Turns out I really liked it. Yeah. So, sometimes university throws you some curveballs. But when you do choose your courses and you choose your major, okay, it's really important to focus on getting a good GPA, which usually means doing what you're good at, doing what you enjoy. Because if you enjoy studying, because you like doing those chem problems, like freak show cat over there, who likes chemistry, um, then and I'll say I'm the weirdest one of all. I like genetics, but follow your passion, and that's where you're going to be successful. You want to show academic progression, which means your GPA improving over time. Definitely admissions committees like that. If those of you who are just getting your grades back and going, "Ugh," usually the first year is wiped off. You get a clean slate going into your second. But you do want some basic science courses if you get a choice as part of your program, simply because it helps you on the MCAT and helps you once you get into medical school. There's some gaming of the system. A lot of schools don't look at your summer courses. So in that case, maybe you want to take those really difficult courses if they're offered in the summer. I know due to COVID, a lot of universities are switching to more offerings in the spring and summer. So take advantage. It's often a really good strategy to get some of those courses you're dreading out of the way. But ultimately, it's just maintain a high GPA. And don't just go into courses because you think that they're pre-med courses. Just do something you're going to get a good GPA with and do it well. And here's the cutoffs I was talking about. There's minimums. They do not look at your application unless you meet these criteria. Each school has slightly different calculations for averages and stuff. So this is school dependent. And if you're applying from a different school, the conversions are actually posted. I know for U of A, they're all posted. So you can tell if I have if I have an 85% at UBC, what does that translate to the U of A scale? And they'll tell you, which is an A. Okay. Again, different criteria often for out of province applicants. It's harder to get in out of province. Not only is there fewer spots, but the standards are higher. They will not look at your application at Alberta if you don't have a 3.3. You can apply. They will take your $100 and some, but they're not going to look at it. Okay. Similarly, look at U of T, 3.6. Oh my God. Queens is a fantastic medical school. But they don't even look at your application unless you have over a 3 points. These are high GPAs. They are high. They are terrifying. No, they're high. Let's look at the average GPAs of the students who get in. So it's one thing to say, oh, well, I have a 3.3. I can apply to schools. Does that mean you're actually competitive? And the answer is likely not. Again, there has to be other life factors that go into your application to be able to be considered at a 3.3. Even if you can apply to the various schools. So this is the average GPAs of the first year class in medical school. Yeah, they're high. 3.87 at Calgary, 3.93 at Ottawa, 3.91. These are averages. You can be competitive with a lower than that average if you're just like about to just log off and toss your hands up and, I don't know, become a surf instructor. But these are high averages. However, there is a little bit of a caveat to that. There is definitely something where you should tune in, because it's not just here's your your GPA at the end of your transcript. It's just like all of your courses pop out a GPA. That's not what your competitive GPA or your GPA adjustments that are made. So each school does this differently. Okay. What is important to think about here is you have your transcript, and you will have your transcript, say after third year. Look at it, do the adjustments, and say which school, based on these criteria, where am I going to be competitive? And you might find it's a school that maybe is not on your radar, but you turn out when you look at their how they've calculated the GPA, you're like, oh wait, my GPA actually looks better at Ottawa than it does at U of A. And therefore you're a more competitive applicant there. So that's the power of these slides, right? Is that you can always reference this and no major changes are expected. Good news, most schools drop your worst year, which, let's face it, is your first year, right? Like I had a 2.0 my first semester, first year. banner year. Turns out I was registered in calculus. I did not go once. Not at all. Forgot. I don't know. I think I forgot. And so, but generally, your worst year is dropped. McMaster doesn't make any. Ottawa has this funky formula that they do. Some look at only your most recent 2 years, and often they will like if your GPA goes up and up and up as you progress. Because in fourth year, by the way, your fourth year is your easiest year, because you're doing these little journal club classes and you're doing your honors research project, and it's just easier. And you're just all focused on what you love. So it gets easier, I guess, is the answer. So not only does your GPA get often the worst year dropped, there's also exclusions. So again, most schools do not consider summer courses. So that gives you an option. Play with that a little bit if you want. Obviously, sometimes jobs and things get in the way of life, of your education. And part-time courses generally are not considered, which means basically 3 or fewer courses per semester. Schools do like seeing a full course load. I know there's rumors about like if you take 4 and 4, it's considered full time. They do. I've talked to a couple of current medical students and medical student friends, and one of the things that they've said is that taking a full course load really prepares you also for the rigors of medicine. If you can't hack 5 and 5, or like your equivalent, I know sometimes you get lab credits and stuff, but sort of 5 core courses, then medical school is going to be a lot harder. So it's also part of that evidence. Grad school courses do count. For most research-based grad programs, you don't take tons of courses, but again, these are sort of ways that you can navigate the system so that you can improve your GPA that they actually see. Okay. The other thing is there's minimums for the MCAT. We'll talk about, by the way, I was just finalizing dates. I think we're going to go like Wednesday, January 18th or whatever that is, 20th or something like that, 20th. Wednesday, January 20th, the 21st, and then the 24th, I think, we're running all about the MCAT seminar and getting into medical school again. So in January, we'll be running more seminars. If you haven't yet attended the All About the MCAT seminar, it's really extensive as well. Lots of stuff to talk about, including how the MCAT is scored. So we're going to cover that in another seminar. But there's these funky scoring. It's out of 132 for all 4 sections. And you need a 124 for a minimum to even look at UBC. You need a 127 or 28. Again, we'll talk about that in the All About the MCAT seminar. But ultimately, you have to be like 75th percentile and up to get your application looked at. So those are the minimums to apply. Okay. And so again, each school is slightly different. We'll talk about more about things like CARS or critical analysis and reasoning skills as we do the All About the MCAT. So use this again to tailor your application. Say, this is my portfolio. How do I overlay this on the schools? And where am I going to be competitive? So what are the MCAT scores of the students that are in medical school? Well, of course they're high. They're impossibly high. They're grossly high. 128 and above for all of the sections is a really good competitive score. So, of course, duh. So the minimums, a lot of students are just meeting the minimums and getting in with your MCAT, but those minimums are hard. Those are challenging. Okay, and we see like 129, and that's an exceptional score. It's out of 132 again for the medical schools. So I'm just making sure there's no questions about that. So when do you write the MCAT? This is the dates as released by the AAMC, the American Association of Medical Colleges. These are fresh, hot off the presses. They've just been released. These are what the dates look like. So obviously all the blue dates are the dates of the exams. In general, the preferred dates of writing are end of July, end of August, or all of August, really. Now, with COVID, I'm so sick of saying the words because of COVID. But anyways, because of COVID, the MCAT is, they're not releasing all their dates at once. Okay, so you can register right now for January and March dates, but then there will be 3 months worth of dates released. I'm expecting registration to open. They haven't actually said yet. That's on the AAMC website. We'll talk about that in the All About the MCAT seminar. But I'm expecting maybe early February for the April, May, June dates to be released. And then, I don't know, probably early May for the July, August, September dates. Okay, so they're doing like in 3-month segments. We have courses that will correspond to all of those dates so that you're ready for any of those dates, whatever fits your lifestyle. Okay, we can get you ready for anything actually but the March dates. We have a course starting February 15th. So that's a kind of an intensive online course, and you'll be ready for those June dates and April and May dates if you want to get it over with, which is sometimes nice. Obviously, life doesn't always allow everybody to just dedicate a whole summer to MCAT. Okay, so we have those available to you, but most students are aiming for, you know, the mid-August dates. So the question is, you know, should you take a prep course? And well, I never took one, and Kat, you didn't either. But you know, now you've instructed for the MCAT and you've talked to all your fellow students. What do you think about the courses? And I guess what kind of student needs a course?
Yeah, so in retrospect, if you have trouble with cars, taking a course is the best way to get better. Because I happened to take cars and it was fine, but even just by talking to my students, I learned a lot more about cars than I ever knew when writing the MCAT. And I was incredibly lucky in retrospect because I was like, oh, I'll study for chemistry. I have to worry about that. And then I realized that my chemistry was fine and what I probably should have studied were the other things. So having a study plan and having motivated people around you, because you will take the course with other students who have signed up, is a really nice way to do well on the MCAT. And it's a lot more, how do I put it? It's a lot more, it's a lot better preparation, because for me, I wasn't sure if I was going to do terribly or do well. And I took the chance and I got lucky and I happened to do well because there's an element of not knowing exactly what's going on on the other side. If you take a prep course, you have a pretty good idea of what the MCAT is, and you're not just going to be like me and be like, oh, I'll try and we'll see if it's fine. Because it's tougher and tougher with more people taking courses. So I've mentioned structure. I've mentioned proven methods. You have to get into an author's head for doing something like cars, and this is the reading portion of the MCAT. And it's a lot easier for someone to tell you where you're going wrong than to figure out what's going wrong. Focus and motivation. For me, my study, the week before the MCAT, I was like, oh, I'll just stop and give up. It's going to be fine. But having a little bit of extra motivation can be really helpful. In addition, you have feedback. So I do some instructing as well. I teach the chemistry course. And sometimes I go around and I look at what someone's doing when they're writing the MCAT, and I'll mention, well, you spend a long time writing a passage, or you spend a lot of time, like, you don't cross out different things and eliminate. So having that feedback can really help you improve. And number one is to keep you on track. So what most people do is they set out to study. They don't know exactly what they're going to study because there's 4 different sections and there's an infinite amount of material. And you spend your time focusing on one section that doesn't necessarily matter. And it winds up being difficult because the MCAT then winds up being on everything you didn't study. So in a prep course, what you get is you get more of a holistic approach. And you have a better chance of being prepared because you get a rigorous amount of, this is something that's likely to show up on the exam, versus studying like the one NMR spectrum that's never going to show up on the exam. And if it does, it's one question. Also, this is the bit where I find it uncomfortable because I'm not very good at shilling for myself, but I am told I am a top quality instructor because I have taken I think about 10 organic chemistry courses over my career, and then I've had to TA multiple times. So I know all the chemistry ad nauseum so that you can learn from me the interesting and highlighting points. Whereas I know all of the random garbage that no one really is interested in knowing. Um, in addition, Tora is also, you've heard, she's a prof at U of A. She's done her PhD in biology. She will teach you so much about biology and biochemistry. And in addition, this happens to me where the course is well designed enough that I can't tell you the useless things that I find interesting, and we are forced to keep to the script and tell you stuff that is interesting and relevant to the MCAT. And finally, if these things don't convince you, the class schedule, we have 3 classes per week. So you can take these classes at your leisure. And if you feel like you're sick one day, you don't have to worry because we're probably going to have the same class another 2 times.
And, one of the things that I love about teaching the MCAT, which is why I've been doing it for probably as long as some of you have been alive. But anyways, the reason why I love it is because my job as a Prep 101 MCAT instructor is to take care of you, is to celebrate your ability and like get you to the finish line, which is in medical school. Like I just submitted my grades yesterday for my first year undergraduate biology course. And I gave out probably 20 Fs. I was joked that they usually volunteer as tributes for those Fs just because they were like me as first year and, don't write the midterm or the final or attend any lectures. But what happens with the MCAT is that, every single one of you that's in this course can get a perfect score on the MCAT because there's 70,000 other students taking the MCAT in any given year. So the curve is in our favor so that my job is to get all of you a perfect score, at least in bio and cars, which is what I teach. Kat can take the chem. And so that's where, over the experience that I've had, and obviously in a lot of our other instructors as well, is that we know how to produce better scores. We know how to tackle this exam. And I think one of the most important things about the MCAT to recognize is it's not a science test. It's not. There's foundational knowledge that you need to have about some of the concepts in science, but this is a thinking test. This is a problem solving test. This is testing skills that you haven't really used yet often, but that can be taught. So it's a lot of teaching and practicing and learning techniques like, as Kat was saying, like find the author in a CARS passage, eliminate answer choices, paraphrase the question stem, map the passage, summarize the figures. Like these are things that we drill over and over and over again, and we make them so natural to come to you that is something that when you first step up to an MCAT passage, you're going to be like, what? I'm sorry, how am I supposed to get any of these right? But with our system of tactics, it's not really jargony. It's not really like some hack, but it's just a really well-designed, comprehensive way of tackling this MCAT. So we spend a lot of time in class. Okay. Roughly 12 hours a week is your typical attendance and what you're expected to attend to. So your classroom dedicated time is about 12 hours a week online or in class. Hopefully, I miss your faces. In May, hopefully we'll have some classroom offerings in the various markets. We also have, and we always get tons of questions about this free repeat policy. Oh my God, there must be strings. There's no strings attached. You can take it as many times as you want. Okay. My record so far is seeing a student take the MCAT, our prep course 5 times. And he got into medicine. Eventually, took a bit. When we had, as Kat was saying, we have this flexible schedule. I love this too. Like it's just we're the only company I think that offers anything remotely like this, and it's super valuable. And that is that we offer, say, Bio 1. The first lecture in bio is metabolism and biochemistry. I don't know, something like that. I should have these memorized by now. But Bio 1, I'll teach Monday morning at 9:30 for 4 hours. And then again, Tuesday night at 5:30 and then for 4 hours. And then again, Saturday morning at 10:30. And I do the same thing 3 times. So you can attend all of them if you want to. I make the same jokes, but you can attend all of them, Or you can just pick and choose the schedule that works for you. Say your birthday is on a Monday. Fine. Enjoy. Come to class on Tuesday. Right? So there's a lot of that ability to mix and match, which makes it super awesome. And we also have there's 7 different semesters, or I don't know what you want to call it, sections that we're running this year. First one starts February 15th, quite an intensive get out the gate early kind of session. And then we have one starting in, I looked at this today, April 17th, May 22nd, June 15th. These are all 9 to 10 week courses. And that you'll find a schedule that works for you, that you can integrate in with your life. Okay. There's just a lot going on. And as Kat was saying, I'm not very good at this either. So we have a team of expert instructors. One of the things to look for in a prep course is to make sure that there's not one instructor that teaches like chem and physics and psych and soc. No one can have the breadth like that. You know, I focus on biology and cars because my other job is I'm a writer, a science writer. And then I have this job of teaching bio. That's what I am an expert at. I'm not going to go and just put my hand up and say, sure, you want me to teach SOS? Yeah, sure, I can bumble my way through it. That's not what you're paying for. You're paying for experts. And our experts are all auditioned. So this is a sort of behind the scenes look at how we select our instructors. So I've sat as I had to audition when I first got my job with Prep 101. And now years later, I've sort of helped manage auditions. So I sit in this room where we get candidates to come in and give a 12-minute teaching. There's just teach something, anything in their field for 12 minutes. But in the audience is a group of our students, of your peers, that sit there and evaluate your teaching style and decide whether we should hire you or not. Like literally every instructor that you're going to face has been hired by other students. And oh my God, you guys are ruthless, like ruthless at picking the profs you want. There was this one year in Edmonton and where we were auditioning a physics instructor, and we had lots of candidates. Like one of them had 2 PhDs. Like what? Anyways, incredibly, amazing resume. He walked in, no one just didn't like him. Didn't come across, just did not resonate. And we went through, I don't know, it was like 11 or 12 applicants, all for physics. You guys didn't like any of them. We didn't hire any. We ended up actually flying Luke, who's a superstar instructor. You should see his evaluations. They're just like mind blowing. You guys love him because you should. He's amazing. And he was living in London, England at the time. And we're like, well, we'll fly you to Edmonton for a couple weeks. Can you teach the MCAT course for us? Because we didn't find anyone good enough. Like that's the rigor that we put on ensuring that your instructors are really good. That being said, I hate this slide. It's so expensive. The MCAT course is so expensive, but you're getting a lot. You really are. You're getting huge amounts of materials. Like the day your materials show up is traumatic. Just getting ready for the MCAT course because it's boxes of like classroom companions. I think I have one. Like this guy. This is an old one, but you have these huge books. You get these notebooks and like areas where we follow along in lecture. You get all these practice length, full length tests. You get access to all the official AAMC materials, which are super important. So that's all provided. And that's already about $1,400. So just to accumulate materials without the instruction and the classrooms and the study plan. We've rolled out the study plan this year, and it's literally like, this is what you study today. This is when you write your exam, depending on when your class starts and when your exam is. So you type in and when you register for the course, it'll be like, okay, you've registered for the May 22nd start date, and you plug in your test date, and then it spits out a study plan. And it literally shows you day by day what you should be doing. And that's one of the hardest things to stick to. And we obviously give you tools on what happens if you sometimes fall off your study plan. And then we'll get you all back on track. And I feel like that's sometimes half of my job with the MCAT is being a cheerleader, right? So many people suffer not from lack of cognitive ability, but just lack of confidence. And I just I believe in you guys, sappy. So let's get to the other half of your application. So we've got GPA, do what you love. MCAT, take a Prep 101 course. All the other stuff, the extracurriculars, clinical, in this order of priorities, okay, is clinical experience, then ideally research, then your volunteering, then your tutoring, your teaching, your work, all those kinds of things. So you want to show this as, again, we go back to that slide where I was like, there's all those C words, compassion and commitment and cognitive ability. How do you prove you have those outside of your GPA and your MCAT score? It's these things. It's definitely these things. And Kat, I always get this question and I actually don't know where you get clinical experience as an undergrad. Do you know? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't have a ton of clinical experience, and a lot of people have less than that's less than they'll tell you. There's always going to be one or two people that know the hospital director and have volunteered there for 4 years because of their connections. For me, the way I eventually wound up getting clinical experience is I had a lot of research experience in chemistry. And so when I applied to a clinical research position, it was a work learn job, which I got on the UBC, which I saw a posting for on the UBC website. When I got that clinical job, it was because of my prior research experience in other areas. So I think the easiest way for a person with no other connections is to get research experience in anything, and then in your third or fourth year to get a clinical research position.
So let's talk about that research. So what you did you do undergraduate research or just as grad school?
I did a lot of undergrad research. I started out in my first year. I basically fried mushrooms. I carbonized them because I was trying to make something that was a replacement for a battery. So I worked a little bit in materials chem. Then I got to go to Switzerland and I worked on phospholipids for another 4 months. And then these two positions, because I had those experiences, it kind of snowballed. And then I wound up working in a urology clinic. And then I did my undergrad thesis work. So tons of different research along the way. I have a lot more research than the average person. What I had less of is I had less volunteering and community service. I had worked as a lifeguard. That was probably my most clinically relevant experience because I got to do first aid. And I got to do a lot of teaching of swimming. And I volunteered with my local chemistry clubs. So that was for the Department of Chemistry at UBC. So these are kind of all of these things that I did, I had for multiple year commitments. I didn't necessarily do hours upon hours. For lifeguarding, a lot of the time during the semester, I only worked 4 hours a week. But the fact that I kept up with it for year, for multiple years is what I think the Faculty of Medicine smiles upon. As for teaching experience, because I had some connections in the department from doing research, when it came time to hire undergraduate TAs, I think when I put my application in, it kind of came up because people happened to know me. And so building those relationships, it got me to the point where I could do teaching assistantships. And eventually, I think working for Prep 101 was also something that really enhanced my teaching. As for work, I mentioned that I lifeguarded. I also worked at the hospital as a research assistant. And I think that was about it for my work experience. A lot of people will work as registered nurses, or they'll work as first aid attendants, or they'll work for a local non-for-profit. These are kind of things that people tend to do.
And I think that's something where I think is often underappreciated on your med school applications is the role of, just because you get paid to do it doesn't mean that it's not something that demonstrates your skill, right? And I think that's something that everyone's so focused on of not getting paid to do what you're good at and volunteering to do what you're good at. You can also get paid to do it,
Yeah, getting paid doesn't make it less valuable, especially because medicine understands that not everyone is rich and you may need to pay your bills and keep the lights on in your house. So that will not make it a less valuable experience for you.
One of the things, and one of the things that students often don't appreciate is how many scholarships and awards do not get claimed, um, and how many are out there that apply to you. Okay, and so that's an important thing where any award, anything, any, $100 for getting the top score in one of these weird classes, that matters. That all goes in. It's sometimes just a tally. And so every school, at least that I've ever seen, has scholarships and awards website that all of the awards that are registered through the university are available, and pour through those. Okay. There's so often these really, you might just fit, might just fit the scholarship. And it's like, yeah, I'll apply. Here's $500. Well, that's $500. And awards, things like that. So just stay tuned for those because they do certainly enhance your resume. And then, all these things, there's always that student. There's always that amazing person. And they're just like amazing at everything they touch. And we don't like those people. They make us all look bad. No, I mean, I had this friend, we were business partners at one point for a science communications website. Anyways, it was really nerdy, and we had a podcast. Um, and she was just this exceptional human being. Like, she wrote a children's novel. Like, it's at chapters. She had she ended up doing her degree in genetics, then going on to do a Shakespearean acting course, intensive for like a year. And then she did her master's in the history of science. And then she's like, I feel like going into medical school. So then she just like went to medical school and she got a full ride at NYU, and she's now a pediatrician. It's like, yeah, there's those people. If you can be a Brittany, great. But if you're not, because my friend's name's Brett, then there's always those violin virtuosos and all those kinds of things. Of course, that matters. Not all of us are virtuosic. And you can still get into medicine. So I always find it this particular section a bit annoying because it makes it sound like everybody who gets into medical school is exceptional. And you might not feel it. You might be. I'm not going to judge. I'm not exceptional. I do feel like I could get into medicine. But what matters for your non-academic activities? Do it for the right reasons. Don't just do it because you're trying to rush to get medical school applications. It's pretty darn obvious, okay, for the people that are not volunteering. They're volunteering to volunteer, not because it matters to them. The duration matters because it does show your commitment, right? If you just do a 2-week paid volunteerism where you dig a well in South Africa, that's not really showing that you're ultimately committed to helping. It's just showing that your parents paid. So you want to stand out. You want to seek leadership roles, teaching positions. You want to do what you enjoy, whether that for me was coaching basketball. And I still do it today. And so just the things that make you you. And that's where, again, you can represent who you are by your work, your volunteering, all those kinds of things that go on ultimately to your CV. And challenge yourself with those things as well. So let's get to some nitty gritty. So the nitty gritty, and oh yeah, by the way, please fill out that evaluation. We'd love to know what you guys thought of tonight. So you've decided you take the Prep 101 MCAT course this summer, okay, or this in the next 10 months or so, and you're going to write the MCAT, you're going to rock it, and you'll be ready to go. Then you'll be ready to apply. Again, you normally apply at the very beginning of your 4th year. The deadlines come up quickly. Why are these 2017 dates? I don't know. But anyways, the dates have not changed in years. It's September 15th for UBC. It's October 1st for Calgary. The reason why I know these so well is because I write reference letters that are due those days all the time. Okay, so it's always these dates, and OMSAS is October 2nd. So it comes quick. It comes fast and hard, and applications are extensive. Your primary application involves your transcripts, of course, your MCAT scores, of course. Some schools require an autobiographical sketch, which is really just like your cover letter, just like a summary of your resume. and it highlights your biggest accomplishments and those kinds of things. Your personal essay is different. Your personal essay is, why do you want to go into medicine? Why you? What is it about you and your experiences and your life views and those kinds of things that make you a candidate for medicine, not just because I volunteered. Okay. Hopefully we all volunteer. And of course, reference letters. So autobiographical sketch is not all schools require it. We'll have a list of what schools do, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So this is really just like a text version of your resume. In academia, we call it the CV, the curriculum vitae. So highlights your volunteer activities and what's important about it. And it highlights your awards and it highlights your research experiences and all those kinds of things. Needs verifiers, which just means that people can attest that you actually did those things. And, I've been a verifier for lots of things, and I just get contacted and said, did Alana actually coach basketball with you for a couple of years? Yep. She was amazing. She's a internal med resident now at U of A. And your personal essay is personal. Okay. It is meant to be personal. Kat, do you remember your personal essay? Well, I guess it was only a year ago. What do you remember your personal essay?
Yeah, so I didn't have a personal essay for UBC. I did have one for some applications I did for the US. And I've decided that I'm really glad that UBC didn't have a personal essay because I find it very hard to write about myself. In all of these statements here, making it truly personal, weaving a story, I found it very difficult to say. I just said things like, I really like medicine, and I think I would be good in this career, which is something that is which is the more the way that I've applied for jobs in the past. But I think to get an interview, it's quite tough, and you have to workshop a lot about what kind of things you did in your work experience. Like for me, I would wanted to talk more about what experience I had lifeguarding and explain the human connections that I had built there and the things that I had felt. But this essay is so tough to write. But
It
if you're
takes
very,
time.
huh?
It takes time. You got to sit with it.
I think there's also people with very good qualities of self-advertising. I have a lot of difficulty getting up on the soapbox and telling people about how I am the next best thing. Um, I self-identify as I was a decent student, and uh, but yes, this takes a lot of time. It's also really helpful to go to people that you know because they're much better at championing you than you are yourself.
Now, some schools require Casper. Okay. So Casper you did Casper for UBC. Well, this is a new thing that's kind of an addendum onto your application. And Casper is the computer-based assessment for sampling personal characteristics. And it was developed at McMaster. And it's becoming more and more required, isn't it? What's it like?
Yeah, so I took the Casper also for US applications. I don't think UBC requires it yet.
Okay.
Um, it is stressful because I did it kind of as like my US applications were very rushed and I didn't understand what was going on there. But that's okay because COVID hit, so I'm not so sure I would have wanted to go anyways. Um, but Casper is basically an ethics test. And I like the idea of it, but I don't like the current, like they're trying to make it more of an interview, a pre-interview process, which I like the idea of. For me, it was a lot of typing. And so you get some sort of prompt like your two coworkers are fighting. How would you diffuse the fight? And then you'll type things like, I would put them in the room together and I would be a neutral moderator and ask them about their feelings, this sort of scenario. And it's really great because it's going to show more about what you are like as a person, which I think is really important for medicine.
And it's a bit of a maturity test in a way, right? Like, do you know yourself and do you know your strengths and, can you deal with adversity, I guess?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Some schools will eventually ask for secondary applications, which is just hoops. And those are super annoying. But then, fingers crossed, you get interviews. About 30% of applicants get interviews once you cross that threshold of having all the minimum requirements. And again, what you want to do is not just get in the door at the university, you want to get in the room, in the physical room at an interview or online, if they're the way they're doing it this year. So what which universities, looking at these schools, which ones are you going to be a good candidate to get an interview, to get in that room? Because that's the important one. So UBC, kind of again, 50-50. They look at your academics, which is your MCAT GPA, and then they look at the non-academic criteria. So your reference letters and those kinds of things. Calgary, less focus on your GPA, more focus on your what do they call it? Specified non-cognitive attributes. Again, U of C is looking for not a different applicant, but a more just mature, just more experience, just more self-awareness in their applicants. And that's the goal student. And again, you can see here, depending, in order to get an interview, then Ottawa's using Casper, other places are using Casper, but GPA, 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 MCAT, 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 and then the various other scores. So this is where you want to, like McGill, much more academic, right? If you got a good GPA, McGill's maybe a good place to apply, right? If you're the 4.0 and the incredible MCAT score, yay, you put us all to shame. but then maybe McGill's makes you a really good candidate. But the stats are good. But roughly 30% of applicants get an interview. Okay, across the board. Again, Ontario's are skewed a little bit because there's just more applicants because it's easier to apply to those schools. But 30%, it's not bad. That's not bad odds. And once you get in the door, then that's hopefully where you can really shine. Now, the interview is stressful, and the interviews come in different formats. There's what's called the MMI, by far the most popular, multiple mini interview. Okay, there's the panel, which is like those 4 people. I always have this view of the panel interview being like that scene in Good Will Hunting, where Ben Affleck, whatever his name was, and he's sitting there and he's like, love that movie. I've seen it like a dozen times. But anyways, that's what I see as this intimidating panel interview. Some schools still do that. And obviously more and more doing some of these remotely, Skype or Zoom or whatever they prefer. But as you can see, as I scroll through this, most schools, MMI, multiple mini interviews. And Kat, you did a multiple mini interview. Okay, just what happens?
So the great and bad thing about an MMI is it's about 1.5 hours. And instead of, you getting a panel, you're going to see about a person every 10 minutes. And so it feels very much like being a physician. For me, it felt like an emotional roller coaster because 2 of these are acting scenarios. And the actors are really good. So one of them, I got so invested in his story, and you're supposed to be invested. You're supposed to be like in an acting scenario. Like you might be someone giving someone a loan and you have to ask them for money back, or your friend went drinking and driving. But for me, the actor really got me. So I was super sad because there's someone watching your interview, and I start hearing about this guy's life situation, and I don't realize it's an actor. So I start crying a little bit, and I'm like, well, at least they think I'm human. But the lady that wasn't supposed to talk to me, she's like, are you okay? And as soon as I got a hold of myself, I go to the next guy and I got to go to the next station, and I had to get over my emotional meltdown and move along. Fortunately, they thought I was emotionally in tune enough that I still got to go in. So if your MMI experience is bad, just remember mine was terrible.
Well, it's interesting because actually a lot of the questions that they ask in the MMI are published. I found them. I have a document somewhere, and they're all like, you can rehearse them, not recommended, but you can get a feeling for like, is it ethical? We have some questions coming up, but the multiple mini interviews are just that little, like, you just sit in a room, right? And then they just give you 8 minutes to talk. So you have to be able to talk, which is not always everyone's strength. But they're looking for, do you get it? Do you know why you're here? Right? Like, why are you pursuing this? Why do you want to become a doctor? One of the interesting things to keep in mind is that, are you a good fit for this medical school? Do you know why you've applied to this school? Keep that in mind. As much as you're interviewing them, or they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. And you need to know a little bit about the school in order to figure out what they're looking for. And every school has slightly different personalities and if you're going to be a good fit. But ultimately, they're looking for a lot of cultural competence. U of A, U of M are both quite dedicated, and actually U of S to a certain degree, and is growing to cultural awareness, cultural literacy, and particularly with Indigenous health. So it's something that to be mindful of and recognize that that's definitely something that schools are looking for. And are you going, like, what the interviewers are looking for is, are you going to make a good colleague? Do they want to work with you? You're going to be their peer. Most of the well, all of the interviewers are at some stage of their medical team, whether they're nurses or doctors or just admissions personnel. You're going to be a part of their team. They're interviewing a team member, and so you have to sort of convince them that you're green, that you're have a lot to learn, but when you do, you'll be standing with them shoulder to shoulder and solving patients' problems. So the questions that they ask are the simple ones. You need to have an answer for, why do you want to go into medicine? Okay. Think about it, because everyone is just going to say, well, because I want to help people. Like, sure, but why you? And so I have that question answered. I find that when I talk to students about, sort of some of my friends getting ready for interviews and stuff, I'll sit there and say, okay, well, describe something that you're most proud of. Canadians do not do well on that. Americans do really well. We're not good at boasting up here in the Great White North. So think about it. Have some, again, that self-awareness, that maturity that comes with being someone that your patients are going to trust. Okay. And these are kind of the MMI type questions. What's the most stressful event in your life and how did you overcome it? Be honest, be real, be a human. They're looking for compassion and curiosity and all those C words. So what's your proudest accomplishment? What do you do if you don't get in? That's a fair question. What does your life look like if you're not successful at that particular moment? And so the interview advice is, be able to know your application really clearly. I think that's some advice that I've gotten from a few students who've gone through this, is that remember what's on your application. What did you say in your personal essay? Read that before you go into your interview. What you want to do is you want to engage the interviewer. You want to make eye contact. You want to, be professional, all those kinds of things, but ultimately be ready for anything. And this is something I know very, very well. I have written a lot this year, more than ever. I bet I wrote 40 reference letters for medical school this year. I don't know why. This year is a weird one. But you need an academic reference. Okay. And I will say I have a pet peeve with this, because I shouldn't really know my good students in a first and second year class. Because you come to class, you understand the material, you go home, you study, you do well. Why do you have to talk to me? Right? The people that talk to me are the ones that don't get it. What are you going to come talk to me about? Like, hey, totally understand your lecture. Let's have an awkward conversation. Right? So it's really hard and it's very stressful to ask for reference letters. And I understand that. So one of my biggest pieces of advice is seek out courses at your institution, at your home institution, where you have small class sizes, journal clubs. I was teaching this amazing course. They cut it because of budget cuts. But anyways, of this science and leadership. And I had 15 students, and it was amazing. It was just so much growth on all sides. I grew too. It was just amazing. And those are the places where my reference letter is like super heartfelt and really accurate. There are sometimes I have a reference letter composed in my head that has gender neutral pronouns, because I don't know if Jordan Smith, who has asked me for a reference letter, is a guy or a girl. And I'll sit there and be like, okay, well, do you have time to meet? Oh, sorry, the deadline's tomorrow. Can you just like write something? I'm like, okay, you got an A. Hooray. Not a strong reference letter. So yes, I understand reference letters are hard for the best students, but who to ask? Academic. You need at least one academic reference, someone that knows you. And the best way to get to know profs is small class sizes. Okay. Research classes. As Kat was saying, she did some undergraduate research as well. At U of A, we have like Bio 298, fabulous class. Look for those undergraduate research opportunities where you get to know profs. How to ask, just by email. Okay. Just, yeah, if I know you and I know you well, just like, hey, Dr. Couture, hey, I took your Science 299 class last year. Looking to go into medicine, as we've talked about before. Hoping to get a reference letter. Yep, done. Let me know the dates and the times and remind me. Remind me. Shamelessly remind me. Okay. And you ask about a month before. So then after you go through your interview, you've had all this stuff, every single application is looked at by a human. Okay. Someone on the admissions committee has your file and they go to, and they make a written summary and then they do an oral summary, which means that they actually go and they try and you want them to just basically support you. You want to convince them that you belong there. And that person will kind of make or break your admissions into medical school. There's a mathematical formula for that decision. So your GPA plays a role in most schools. UBC starts from the very beginning and reviews your whole file again. There are a couple of schools who just look at the interview, Queens, for instance, and there's another one I thought. No, just Queens, apparently, just your interview. But some of them will focus more on the interview, of course, like McMaster, 70% goes to your score in the interview. And then they just mathematically just pop out your interview score and rank you and you get a decision. Okay. And you get your decision, which can be accepted. Woohoo, congrats. Let me know. I love hearing from my former students about them getting in. Then rejected. Okay. Hurdle that can be overcome. Waitlisted is super awkward because if you're waitlisted, you wait usually about a month later, as of course some students will get accepted to multiple schools and they have to decline a couple of them. There'll be positions that open up. And the waitlisting is something very, very stressful. You can be admitted. I have a friend from law school who went to law school. He was admitted a week before classes were due to begin. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm moving, starting law school. So yeah, that can be hard and something to, if you're waitlisted, it's better than rejection. If you do get rejected, then you probably know why. You probably like, yeah, I knew my GPA maybe wasn't quite up there. I've got to focus on that weakness. Poor interview. You kind of know if that interview doesn't feel good. You can cry your eyes out like Kat and still get in somehow, but no, you kind of know. So you just you can recognize that and use that as a growth experience and recognize that there's still a path forward. Okay. Getting rejected once does not mean that you'll never go into medical school. However, you might go, that was an interesting exercise in trying to get into medical school. Thought about it, and maybe there's other paths for me. Maybe a medical career, respiratory therapist, physio, all kinds of amazing things as we're learning, public health, pretty important people that are out there, those careers, ultrasound tech. There's all kinds of places that you can be medical related that you may not even know about. A respiratory therapist is super valuable. Nurse practitioners, those people are angels of the medical system, just such wonderful care. Or you can go, yeah, well, actually, no, I feel like I'm going to be a bartender in Greece for a little while, and that's fine. And that's a perfectly wonderful opportunity for you. So with that reminder, you can get these slides on Facebook. They will be posted soon. There's a version up there, but they've just had the updated 2021 dates for the MCAT that will be updated soon, probably maybe after Christmas. So with that, Kat and I will probably just say a quick thank you and happy holidays. And we'll see you guys in January for the other seminars. If you haven't attended those ones yet, there'll be the Medical School Insiders Perspective and the All About the MCAT. And then hopefully we'll see you guys in the course at whatever start date you choose. There's lots available. Visit prep101.com MCAT, and you'll see all of our course dates that you'll find a fit. So we'll see you then.
Best of luck, guys. Merry Christmas.